everybody? Well, look at my webcam, fuzzy all over. Look at that. Oh my. Welcome to another Q and A. This is number 238. And I know I say it every week, but wow, we've been doing this a long time, huh? And let's see, what's news? What's news? I just finished content for a new Christmas book. That's 3 books that are just ready to go. We just need to finish editing and get them going. Yeah, this looks like I've added a filter or something to the camera. Do we have any questions to get started with? Let me know if you do. Nice to see you, Larry. Larry says, hello, happy Trumpet Friday. Woohoo! So, what can I tell you about the week? I hired a band to play at my church. We had a chili cook-off day, and they asked me to bring some jazz, and I did that, and played with 2 people that I had never met before, and it was fun. You know, it was kind of nice to do that. Hello, Mr. Derek. He says, hi, everyone, listening while on the road. Okay, well, there you go. And if I remember right, I know where you're going. And hello, Angela. Angela says, good afternoon, Eddie. It's me, Angela. Good afternoon, everyone. Anybody got a question to get us started? I have some. Well, I won't talk about that. Things are always exciting, huh? Even when they're not exciting, there's stuff to be excited about. Any questions? Any questions? I could look at the recent comments on some of the videos, see if there's anything there. Yeah, I don't see any questions. So how many of you guys saw the video about the expression? Oh, here's Angela. She says, I have been trying to play a song called Jesus' Holy Name, Glory to God by Nora Duncan. Okay. And how are you trying? Are you playing it by ear? So, that's why we're here. Let's see. She said, it's poorly written for trumpet because there are no breath marks from measures 38 to 41. Yeah, so, we can, you don't have to only breathe when there's a mark, okay, or rest. You don't have to wait. You can breathe where you need to breathe. Here's the going idea, and some people get confused about this, the way we say it. They say breathe after long notes, right? And some people get confused about that because if you they're thinking in terms of how long is the note, not how long is the note value, right? So if you have a bunch of eighth notes and one half note, then you breathe after the half note. The only time that's not true is if you've got eighth notes with staccatos on them. Then you can breathe after any one of those staccatos. But we're not talking about that. When we talk about how long the note is, we're not talking about the style. We're talking about the the actual length of the note, whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, etc. If there's a moving line, you shouldn't interrupt the moving line to take a breath. And of course, we should try to breathe where the phrase ends, but that's a little bit more advanced. That's a little bit more advanced. Larry says, what are some of your recommended play along trumpet books? Of course, the ones you've published. And do you have recommendations for others? Um, so I really like the old Music Minus One. I've got a handful of those. I've got the one oh, I even bought an oboe one because there's a concerto that I learned, an oboe concerto, and they've got the orchestra accompaniment. So I play that one with the old Music Minus One. So that's my favorite. There's also a bunch of Hal Leonard ones that the students use. I have one student in particular who's got a huge collection of Hal Leonard. So yes, you know I haven't heard any that I don't like. I like all of them. Really. I and if you're talking about improv, of course the Aerosols are good. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. So yeah, um, Angela, if you just breathe where it makes sense to breathe, it's okay. She says it has dotted quarter notes and a lot of eighth and 16th notes. Well, then you would breathe after the dotted quarter. I hope that makes sense. Um, I look like I've got a hairdo, but that's not a hairdo. That's just. I apologize. I think it's time to get. Finally, let me put the light on. Let me do that real quick. I don't normally use this. Let's set it up real quick. Ah, let's see if that helps with the focus. I'm convinced now, but you know what? Before, remember we were having this problem before, and I figured it out that it was the light. Um, yeah, so I think this is different though. These little textural things in the background, that wasn't there before. So I think it's real close to time to changing out this webcam. All right. Larry says, shouldn't you align your breathing with the phrasing? Yes, you should, but that's not always possible. Um, you know how they often have us, at least at university, right? They'll have us do the violin suites, the cello suites that Bach wrote. There is no place to breathe, no place, nowhere. You have to you have to be creative when you invent ways to breathe on that, and it can't follow the phrasing because the phrasing is just so. strung out. So, yes, there are times when, if you can, and that's what I was saying earlier, a lot of people don't know where the phrases are. Depending on how advanced they are, a lot of people don't really know how to tell. So that comes up. All right. So Angela says it's in 3/2 time signature. It's a pretty song, but quite challenging. My breast support is fair. I need to improve that. Very good. So that's what the my routine books are all about. Um, I don't use the word breath support. I use the term steady airstream. I think so. A lot of times when we think about air, we think about the power of the air, like how much oomph you should put into it. But that's not really the answer. The real answer, because you can have powerful air that's not steady, and it sounds awful. I'm going to say that one more time. You can have powerful air that's not steady, a steady flow, and it will make your trumpet playing sound awful, especially if you're using a lot of air and you don't have a steady flow. It's not just bad sounding, it's obnoxious. So what we're looking for is the steadiness of the flow of air. You can't have beautiful music without a steady air. Okay, yeah, I'll say that one more time. You can't have beautiful music without steady air. So that's what my books are for. A lot of people don't know that when we look at the routine books. And what are the routine books? The routine books include Daily Routines, which was first, um, Chops Express, which was second, and then the Chops books. You have Trumpet Chops. The first one I wrote was Trumpet Chops Pro, and then I did Trumpet Chops Player, and then I did Trumpet Chops Apprentice, and then I did Trumpet Chops Tyro, and then the last one I've written right now is Trumpet Chops Master. And the objective of all those songs is to have a steady airstream all the way through. I like to think of all the exercises in those books as a obstacle course for the steadiness of your air. Oftentimes, I just say obstacle course for your air. It's obstacle course for the steadiness of your air. So that's what we're looking at. Angela says, I would be happy if I could hold the note for 16 beats. Sometimes I can, but not often. Yeah, so that's just something you just keep doing and it gets longer. Um, let's talk about what makes it last longer. Of course, you want to take a bigger breath. Some people have trouble with that. I've had students that no matter how much you get them to breathe, they don't breathe enough. You can just tell, right? There's also this other phenomenon, which is the opposite of that. Maybe they breathe enough, but I don't know what the best word is, freak out. Like as soon as it becomes uncomfortable here, they quit. They stop the note. So that's another thing. So you have to breathe in enough, but you also have to breathe out enough. So how do I know when a student's not breathing out enough? Because they're not struggling. right? I'll say play that note as long as they can, and they'll play, and nothing's changing here, and then they stop. I want them to play one. If this is what we're doing, I don't do this much with students anymore, but it's still a thing. I want them to play until they're like struggling to keep going. Now I started that with my air, my lungs not being full because I didn't want to waste your time. Um, but could you see that I at the end of that I was starting to struggle. My there was nothing left um, in the lungs, and I'm pushing past what's comfortable, and then there's a little bit of a shake at that point that happens. Now that's what I just did. Now is a static long tones. I don't teach static long tones. So let me just warn you there. I think it's okay to do what I just did if you're working on breath control. But as a long tone, it's not my favorite way to do it. I hope that makes sense. So yes, I'm not a big fan of static long tones. I actually think that if you have a choice of what to do with your time, moving long tones is much better. And I don't mean that in the sense that Chickowitz meant. So for Chickowitz, this was a moving long tone. Like all the Clark studies are moving long tones. In fact, the term moving long tones came, oh, excuse me, the term moving long tones came from Herbert L. Clark. And today we are familiar with moving long tones with a different name. We call them flow studies. Okay. So when I was in Chicago, one of the Chickowitz things that they gave us was that's a moving long tone according to that other definition. But the way I'm using it right now, moving long tone is the equivalent of what I have in my books. It's not just one note. It's it's what I have in my books. And by the way, I consider so my long tones in my books, I'm talking about the Chops Express and the more importantly, the Trumpet Chops books, not the daily routines. The daily routines doesn't follow this. Um, by the way, this is why I wrote the new books was because the daily routines didn't have these better exercises. And people were buying the daily routines, and I didn't want to discourage them from that because there's people all over the world that are benefiting from that book. But I've made improvements, so I left that book alone. That's how I compose too, right? If there's something I want to do to improve something, I just do it on another composition. That's why I have literally hundreds of compositions. What we publish at our store and online is just a fraction of how many I've written. And and the biggest reason for that is because I don't want to put stuff up if I don't have real demo recordings. That's why it's like that. I can make my own demo recordings if it's all trumpet. Anyway, on a tangent, we're talking about the long tones. My long tones in my books are a combination of influences, or come from a combination of influences. For example, we've been talking about the spider long tones. Well, um, when I say expansion, so I have you see when you look at my books that the long tones expand. Well, that expansion is the spider stuff. It's just you're not playing one note and then the other note, and but we're playing that note and then we're playing a scale up to the other note. So it's really just like the uh, spider's long tones. The difference is the dynamics. I don't want you to do dynamics out of my book. I really don't want that. I think it deters from the benefits. I really believe that if you add dynamics to the stuff that's in my routine books, you don't get as much benefit out of doing the routine. So, um, but yes, what else is in there besides the spider stuff? We've got the Chickwits is in there, right? It starts with that. That's where that came from. Was from the Chickwit study. And what else is in there? Well, now you have stamp. That's always already mixed in there too, because instead of fingering like you would do for the Chickwit study, you bend that first note down. Does that make sense? So that's the nature of my long tones, the new ones anyway, is that they come from a combination of influences. And what I also like is the fact that they, for the more advanced levels, they end on pedal tones. The long tones go all the way down to the pedal tone register. The more advanced you are, I have it organized. It's all on a chart. That's why I was able to do it that way. Um, so yes, we take those long tones deeper and deeper into the lower register, and I think that's valuable for a number of reasons. Also, look at the fingerings that we're using in the long tones because they're not. We do, I remember this big conversation that we had online in the 90s. Which was better, long tones with the octave fingerings? We call them octave fingerings, right? The F is this way, the G is this way, the E is this way. We call those octave fingerings. Um, and then other people would say, no, you should use the easiest fingerings, all three, or open when you get past B flat, stuff like that. And so people would have these big old arguments. And I'm thinking, why do you have to choose? They're different. The reason why you do them is different. Okay. The way I see it, when you use octave fingerings, that's all about control, aperture control, breath control, pitch control. You get a little bit of pitch control benefit in the other fingerings, but not nearly as much. And then the same thing is true, like, right? So when we do them in the long tones, we use all three for most of it until you get to a certain point, and then you switch fingerings. Um, because it's based on what fingerings are easiest. When you do the easiest fingerings, you get benefit because the lips loosen up. You're about to go into some of the harder playing, and you just finished. I think it's perfect, right? Of course, I would because I wrote it. If I didn't think it was perfect, I would change it. But you go from these exercises, the what do you call it? The uh, lip buzz and the mouthpiece buzz, and those tire you out. And yes, they can make you stiff. Going to the low pedals with this fingering is going to help alleviate that stiffness. It sort of like gives you a massage. There's people that say, I even went to a master class and they were saying this. Oh, it doesn't matter what order you do the exercises in. Just do what you like. Just make sure you get through them all. That's just not true. It does matter. There is a difference in the way you end up playing. It has an impact on your playing. So it's not just whatever exercises in whatever order. No, that's not. I'm not saying people can't make that work. That's not what's most beneficial. And the reason for that is because the way our minds work, we do better if we spend more time on a certain thing. So when we go from one thing to the next, it's better if those two things are related. Does that make sense? So if you say, "Oh, well, today I think I want to start with triple tone," um, good luck with that. And you know what? One of the problems with not having the kind of structure that my books have when you practice is that when something goes wrong, without that structure, it's much harder to figure out what to do about it. Does that make sense? Anyway, let me read some more of these. Let's see here. I would be happy if my breath support was better. Yep, that sounds good. Breath support is my biggest struggle besides range. Okay. Larry says the one thing that took me a long, long time to learn is there is no reason to rush through exercises and books. Investing some extended time on each can be beneficial. Absolutely. That's right. I was just telling one of my students recently, I always had teachers coming through, and I don't, when I say stuff like this, please don't think I'm bad mouthing those teachers. Every teacher has strengths and weaknesses, including myself. I appreciate all of my teachers. But my last long term teacher, Dick Schaefer, we had one etude that lasted us 6 months. We were on that same etude for 6 months. Why? Because I needed it. I'll tell you what happened after I did that etude when I finally had it right and I finally understood what he was trying to say. So it wasn't about could I play it, it was about playing it right. So it was one of the beach etudes. Um, I think his name is Marcel Beach, and it's a lot of people consider it like the hardest etude book out there. The thing is if you practice right, there's nothing hard. If you practice right, there's no such thing as hard. So it wasn't that I couldn't play it in 6 months, is that I couldn't get the style. So we kept doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And I'll tell you what, here's what happened after that. After I finally had his approval on that etude, I've had several times in my career when my career blossomed. The understanding that came with that etude was one of those times when my career blossomed. I went from not being very practical, not being very functional on the gig, to actually nailing where I saw the biggest impact. Believe it or not, because we were doing this in the context of classical music. But the biggest impact it had on me was when this in the salsa, because I was trying to play salsa like a cornet player. Ba ba da 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 dee da da. Right? I was trying to play like that in a salsa band when it was da 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 da. And once I understood the control it takes to do the one or the other, that's when my career blew up. It was like all of a sudden everybody in town wanted me. Not because I could play high. By that time I could play high. My first Super C was about 4 years earlier than that. Um, Not because I was a jazz player, not because I had sight reading. I think the biggest reason why I got hired by all those bands that used to hire me, most of them are gone now. Um, I think the reason was because I was stylistically appropriate for their gig. I knew how to do that, and that appropriateness came from the work we did on that French etude. All of a sudden, the floodgate opened. Like I said, at that time, everybody wanted me as a as their trumpet player on their gig. Lots and lots of salsa gigs, um, cumbia gigs, jazz gigs, big band gigs, classical gigs, top 40 gigs. I played some reggae gigs and stuff like that. And because of what I learned on that one etude, spending 6 months on the one etude, I was then finally uh, stylistically appropriate on every gig, every style. Angela says, I have another question. Do you find yourself given music by a church or other gig that's not transposed or for trumpet? Do you transpose while you're playing? Yes, that's quite common. That's quite common. I actually teach that to my students. I have um, it's a family, two twins that play trumpet, and uh, right now I'm working with them on their transposition. So it's something that we do. And also for the jazz stuff, by the way, to do the jazz stuff properly, you really should be able to transpose. Um, we have computers that can transpose that stuff for you, but here's the thing, it's so easy to transpose. People get intimidated by it, but there's nothing there to get intimidated by. It really is easy. Um, and here's the thing, when you can transpose and when you do transpose, it transforms your musical mind. It does something to your mind. I used to do, what's the name of the company? I had a subscription. I think it was what, $5 or $10 a month for brain puzzles. But I decided that what I do every day is enough of a brain puzzle for me. Transposition is a brain puzzle. So, and I'm not just into transposing parts just so that you can play other instrument music. I think you should be able to transpose from any key to any key. That's my goal. That's what I try to get the students to do when they get that far. Not everybody does that. I mean, I don't give the transposition stuff to all my students. So Angela says, I don't mind it. I use movable do solfeggio to transpose. That's one of the advantages of movable do. That's one of the advantages is that it makes it a lot easier to transpose. Karen says I don't have to transpose generally, right? So a lot of times where you might see that in the concert band is if they have the old parts that have some A trumpet stuff in there. So if you're playing an A trumpet, then everything is down a half step. Sometimes you look out, right? If it's two sharps and it's for A trumpet, then you just go down a half step. Now you just change the key signature and everything is there. You change it to five flats, now you're down a half step. But yes, there is some transposition in the concert bands. But you're right, there's not a lot of it. And now, the trend today, and I don't agree with this trend, I don't like it. The trend today is to play concert band on a C trumpet. I don't like that. But it's not like I have a say in the matter, right? Um, I just don't think it sounds very good. I think the B flat trumpet sounds better in a symphonic band. Now, if you're playing C trumpet in a concert band, then you have to transpose in the other direction. You're reading a B flat part, so you transpose down a step. If you're playing a C part on a B flat trumpet, which would mean anything like a piano part or a flute part, a oboe part, then you would transpose up a whole step. Huh. Gary, hello, Gary. Gary says, I also see Pop's concerts with C trumpet. What are your thoughts? Should it be done on B flat preferably? Um, here's the thing, that culture is so, I know guys that play C trumpet for everything. I'm not, I, I know that they like the C trumpet and that's why they're doing that. This is not that. I don't think most of the people who play C trumpet on a pop song are doing it because that's what sounds best to them. I think they're doing it because that's how you do it. I think they do it that way because um, that's what how it is now, right? That's how everybody's doing it, right? Um, I personally like I personally like the B flat trumpet on the pop stuff. You know, what's wrong with having two horns? Um, and I'll tell you what, not everybody fits this description, right? I played one concert with the Houston Symphony. They told me, this is before the new guys got in there, right? They told me that they had someone they call for lead, they have someone they call for jazz, but they needed a player that would do both. So they hired me for one gig because I do both, right? And I don't think I did a good job, but they hired me. And the guys were playing B flat because it was a pops concert, right? So not everybody does that. But yes, I've seen what you're talking about. I've seen a lot of people play uh, because it's orchestra, they'll play on the C trumpet. Now, let me be clear about that. I'm not just like issuing a blanket statement, putting down people that play C trumpet on the pop stuff. I have a friend who plays very well, and you wouldn't even know if you were listening that it was a C trumpet. And he plays everything on his C trumpet. And I don't have a problem with that. The question here was, what do I think it should be? That doesn't mean that I think what they're doing is wrong. I would never, you know me, you guys all know me, I don't talk like that. And then when people do misinterpret what I'm saying that way, um, it is a misinterpretation. There's no reason. It's art. It's art. It's not right or wrong. You can have preferences. Your preferences don't make someone else's practice wrong. Does that make sense? Um, Mr. Walker, nice to see you. Mr. Walker says we had a player in the Kingwood Pops that had a C trumpet, and he had to transpose everything we played. He spent years in the Philadelphia Philharmonic. Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Was this a long time ago? Was it Dominic? Are you talking about Dominic? Angie says, Angela. Yeah, I remember him. Um, yeah, he was a great player. Angela says, do you play other instruments, Eddie? No, I do not. I can kind of make my way around on the piano. Um, but yes, I, it's, I made up my mind early on that I wasn't going to play other instruments, that I was more interested in playing all styles that had that were that were that used trumpet, and that's what I did. That's that's been my strength all this time, and it became also my strength as a teacher, right? Because if you can play appropriately, that's the big thing, right? It's not just can you play the notes. It's not just can you sight read it. The question is, can you play it the way they want it to be played? And if you're playing dozens of different styles, that's not so easy. I remember one time I was in a recording session and I had to have, uh, well, I don't want to say it that way. We had an argument. And what it came down to was this guy said, well, I play so well in in this other style. Of course, I'm just as good in this style. That logic does not apply. To play in a different style demands that you play differently. And this is why, by the way, when we talk about how helping students get their sound, it takes my students longer to develop a good sound. It's been like that since the beginning. It takes my students longer, on average. Sometimes some of them get the great sound like that. Others take a long, long time. But it's because of the way I teach. I don't teach them how to get a good sound. Because if they get their sound that way, when they don't even know if they've got a good sound, they don't know what a good sound sounds like, and they don't even know if they're doing it. The only way they know that they're doing it is someone says, yes, 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 that's it. So they try to physically do that. But they don't have the ear yet to even know what they're doing. So, no, I don't teach them how to, quote unquote, get a good sound. I teach my students how to create an environment for themselves that will lead to a good sound. But when they get their sound, finally, when they finally reach that point, they will have so much control over that sound that when it's necessary to change, they can change. See, it's not one sound fits all scenarios. That's not how it works. There's not just one good sound. What makes a sound good is whether or not it's appropriate for the gig. So, yes, the way I teach, it's all about that. The way I teach is to help people develop their sound, not mechanically, not do this, this, or this, and now you have a great sound. No, not like that. Papa Walker says it was fun to sit beside him in the concerts. Yes, I can imagine that. I never got to really play with him, but I heard great things, and I did get to hear him play. Angela says I played the French horn in my high school orchestra. I like playing the trumpet better. Yay! Hello, Seppo. Nice to see you. Larry says, joke of the day. How many second trumpet players does it take to change the light bulb? None. They can't get that high. Oh, that's funny. Angela says, my sound got better by practicing. I've gotten better over time. I try to practice every day. Well, yes, obviously, practicing is part of it. There are some things you can do to kind of speed the sound thing up a little bit. Not the kind of stuff I'm opposed to. Stuff like lip bends. Lip bends help you get a better sound. Not maybe I should say it a different way. Lip bends help you. That's when I say you create an environment where you're going to get a better sound. Lip bends are part of that environment. Pedal tones are part of that environment. Uh, I would say that the dynamic spider long tones are part of that environment. Of course, other stuff like long tones, flow studies. Um, what's the other one? I've skipped one. I said pedal tones, lip bends. Anyway, I can't remember what it was. But yes, all of those things come together to help you find your best sound. Larry says, what are some classic, legendary, well-known trumpet etudes and solos? Um, Classic, legendary, well-known. I would say probably the most well-known is the Charlier book, and that's also pretty legendary. Um, it depends on what level you're talking about. So there's also the Brandt book. The Brandt is more of an orchestral book. not necessarily. So there's a lot of people that don't make a distinction between orchestral and other classical stuff. But what's happened is that the orchestral thing has become such a niche that you're almost forced to play a certain way. When I talk about on like this last video that I did where I'm talking about expression, right? This last video, a lot of it doesn't apply to orchestra players. I think that the orchestra thing has become so competitive and so like the guys who have the jobs are now dictating what has to, of course, and that's rightfully so. But there's a certain way that things need to be done. I don't agree with where that's gone today. I don't agree with it. I like the orchestras back when they weren't so perfect. And that's what I was talking about in that last video. Um, but yes, I think everything that I was saying in that video, you have to make an exception. And for the orchestra stuff. Now, there's a lot of people that say, well, it's the same for all classical music. That's not actually true. Here's what has happened, and it's been happening for as long as I've known, and might have been happening before that, is that since the orchestra stuff is so, you got to do it that way, that dictates that those guys, when they play brass quintet, they play it like an orchestra. And in fact, I've actually been to master classes where the people in the brass quintet said, our objective is to play like we're an orchestra brass section. Once again, that's their approach. They can do that because the thing about the brass quintets is that they're not as stick in the mud as the orchestras are right now. The brass quintet, you can play this way or that way. You can be expressive like I was talking about in that video. But because you have that freedom to play whichever way it seems appropriate to you, you also have the freedom to play the way the guys in the orchestras are playing, which to me is a travesty. Really, look at because once you're outside of the confines of the orchestra, why would you want to play like that? Why not do something different if you're playing in a different ensemble? But that's, like I said, that's who I am. When I'm playing klezmer music, I'm playing like an old Jewish guy. When I'm playing salsa, I'm playing like I'm from Cuba or Venezuela or from Puerto Rico. When I play jazz, I'm not going to say it because it would go against something I said a while back. Um, that's funny, but you get my idea. I mean, my point. Why can't it be like that with the brass quintet? When I'm playing in the brass quintet, which I do pretty often, I'm not playing like I'm in an orchestra. I don't want to play like I'm in an orchestra. I want to play like I'm in a brass quintet. Right? Um, anyway, I got off subject here. Let's see, where am I? What are some oh yes, the classic etudes. I would say at the top of the list is Charlier. I also so I have probably more etude books than most people my age. And the truth is, I like all of them. I have a few favorites. But if we're talking about legendary, that would be the Charlier. Legendary trumpet solos. There's so many of them, I wouldn't be able to pick. Of course, you have the most legendary, which is the Haydn and the Hummel. I don't play those. I won't play those if anyone ever asks me. I can play them, but I don't have an E flat trumpet and I don't like the way it sounds on the B flat. So I'll never play those pieces again. All right. I'm not in my at my age, I'm not taking auditions. So there's no reason why I should play those pieces ever again. If I had an E flat trumpet, then yes, I'll play the piece. I'm not gonna buy one. So there you go. Right? Um, Now, there's a solo that is for E flat trumpet that I like the way it sounds on the B flat, and that's the oh, what is it called? Let me look it up real quick. This is a beautiful concerto. I can't find it, and I'm not remembering the name. Let me look on one more page. I have a recording. We were talking last week about what's Neruda. That's it. Gary's gave me uh, a hint. Neruda. The Neruda concerto sounds gorgeous on the B flat trumpet. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And I have a recording. I don't think he does it on the B flat, but we were talking last week about Bernard Kratzer. Oh, that's my favorite recording of that piece. It's it's so pretty. It's trumpet and organ, but the organ part is done so nicely, and his playing and his sound and everything is just so gorgeous. Huh, I need to listen to that again when we get off. All right, where am I? Um, Gary says, is the purpose of the lip bend to help find the center of the sound? That's part of it, but I wouldn't say sound, the center of the pitch. I don't like the idea of saying the word center of the sound because that's an abstract concept. And saying the words center of the pitch is just a little bit less abstract. It's still abstract. It's still abstract because you can't measure it. When we talk about playing to the center of the pitch, we're not talking about playing in tune with the tuner. So there is an aspect of abstraction there. I hope that makes sense. But yes, that's the main purpose. It's not the only purpose, but the main purpose of the lip band is to help find that center. At least when I'm speaking about stuff like that, I'm talking about within my system. Maybe other people do it for other reasons. Like, for example, when we talk about lip buzz, there's a lot of people that do lip buzz for strength, right? I don't do lip buzz for strength. It is a benefit. That's not why we do it. All right. Seppo says, are you familiar with the Franz Emil Etudes? I think you asked me about that before, and I did look them up. Um, but I'm only as familiar as just taking a peek. But I remember last time you told me that you liked them a lot. I think I found some place to download it, or maybe you sent me a link and I downloaded it. I just haven't had time to look at it. Um, Angela says, like Herb Albert, but I think enough past time has passed. I don't know. I don't know what we were talking about. All right, we're at 2:30 now. By the way, I still have the same headache I had last week. That's a week and a half now of the same headache. At least now, I found a different headache pill, so I'm at least functional. I had a very unproductive week this week because I was taking just um, acetaminophen by itself, and it wasn't doing anything. It would roll the pain off just a little bit, but I couldn't get any work done. So once I found this other tablet, at least I can work. I finished the content almost. If Seppo, if you're still there, do you know of two Finnish Christmas carols that we don't do in America? And for them, I don't mean songs. I don't want to. The book I'm working on right now is short by two, and I would like to put something international in there. I have one Mexican one, and of course there's some French ones in there. And I just had this great idea. What if what if I had two Scandinavian? You know. So do you know of a couple of Christmas carols? Now to make it a carol, the the carol has to be strophic. What is strophic? It's like a jazz tune, and it's the same melody but with different um, different lyrics each time that you sing it. That's what makes it a Christmas carol instead of a Christmas song, right? So if there are any Finnish Christmas carols that I could include in my book, I would love to add them. Gary says Sigmund Heron 32 etudes is sort of cool. You know, I used to teach out of the Herring etudes. It was back when I was an etude person. Like, I'm still etude person, but I'm using mostly my own etudes now in my studio. I know that's weird, but it's mostly because of the range. I do have plans at the higher levels to have a collection of my favorite etudes out of all the different books for the more advanced players. But for the beginners and for the first three levels in my system, I got so sick and tired of like looking for etudes that fit all my parameters. I just decided to start writing them. Um, that's a project in the process of anyway. So talking about the etudes, Sigmund Herring used to be required. I used to do the first etude book I would give the students would be this the oh, what's his name? First book of practical studies, Getchell. First book of practical studies. I would get them started in that, and when they were finished with that, we would go from there to the Sigmund Herring 32 etudes. But you know what? He's got like over a dozen etude books, and there's also duet books. You know, I was thinking about Sigmund Herring, right? I would like to. Seppo says there are those Finnish carols for sure. I will pick some suitables and tell more in email. Wonderful. I would really love that. I would really love that. I would love that. Thank you. Um, Now I'll need. Well, maybe not. Yeah, send what you can find. Okay, thank you. Um, what was I talking about? Oh, A2 books. I also now Gary says second book of Getchell is good too. Yes, I like second book, but do you know what? I stopped using the second book. So I told you for a while I was going Getchell to um 32 etudes. Then I had second book for a while. It's okay. It's okay for what I need, right? As a teacher, the way I teach. But what I started doing between the two, and it was after this that I decided I was going to write my own. So I would do Getchell, and then I introduced Potag. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's not a common book. It was originally a French horn book. So Getchell, Potag. And what I loved about the Potag is that most of the etudes were 2 to 4 lines long. Short etudes. And what was nice about that is each one focused on something. So the students would get involved with it, deep dive into that one thing, and then move on to another thing without having to spend months and months and months on the etude. So I was doing that. Now, I want to tell you, now these are not available. The etudes that I'm talking about now are not available in book form. The only way people can get these etudes now is to come take lessons. But I have etudes for the first level. Who do you think influenced those etudes? Of course it was Getchell. I taught out of Getchell for so long that I've got the whole book memorized. Of course, I was influenced by Getchell. You know, there's a famous trumpet player who chewed me out one time because I didn't worship the standard books. And I mean worship, right? But all of my stuff is based on those same books. There's hardly a trumpet staple that didn't find its way somehow into the works that I write. All of my stuff is grounded in traditional trumpet pedagogy. I just altered it all so that it would fit my system. So my system compared to other people's systems is their system is more compared to mine a sink or swim system. If you get to that note too soon, well, what's your problem? I don't want my students to get it. So like the Getchell book was a problem because it would progress in range, nice and slow, nice and slow, nice and slow. But then all of a sudden you got a G, and you didn't build up to the G. That's why I stopped using the Getchell. The Potag influenced my writing because most of my first etudes are 1 or 2 lines long. There's the Potag influence. And the nice thing about Potag was that the focus was always so very clear. What you're doing on that etude is clear. Oh, let me tell you about another etude book that I just love. And that's the one, oh, what's the name of it? And this has also influenced my etudes, right? So my etudes have very dry names like study in cut time. right? I want to teach my students cut time. So what do I call them? Cut time etudes. And the whole point of all those etudes is to practice cut time. I have at the beginning level, I have one uh, etudes in uh, eighth notes. The whole point of all those etudes is to learn how to play eighth notes. Once again, influenced by Getchell, influenced by etude Potag. But there's an old etude book. That's where I got the focus thing from more than all the rest, right? Because you open it and it says, this is for articulation. This is for interpretation. There's also a etude book that's just gorgeous. It's almost not even etudes. It's really more like a unaccompanied solo book. That's how beautiful they are. I think it's little. It's either little or small. I always get those two mixed up. It's small. This, I'll tell you what, if I had to pick a favorite, if I had to pick a favorite, I'll give you a link to the page on Amazon. If I had to pick a favorite, this is my favorite. It's sort of like first year college level. It's okay for like advanced high school, but first year college is perfect for that skill level. So I'm in the process. I haven't been putting much effort into it yet, but I'm in the process of taking a bunch of my inspirations and making etudes out of it. I did send Seppo a few of those etudes. Um, and I like where that went. And I would like to write some more of those. I started that before I got sick. Well, not before. I started that while I was sick, before I got super, super sick. Um, and so I haven't really picked that back up again. But I would just love to convert a lot of these inspirations that are sitting in my desk into etudes, um, because they would work beautifully like that. I would love to do that. But yeah, anyway. So yes, all of there's probably not a famous book that hasn't influenced what I teach and what I've written. Probably not. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging out. Um, God bless you. I do appreciate you guys. This whole between getting sick and a headache and having to go to dialysis and all this stuff. It's just nice to hang out with you guys. Um, yeah, Gary says thanks. Um, yeah, it's kind of nice to just keep coming back to this and talking about what stuff that matters for the trumpet, right? So, Mr. Walker says, "Good to see you again. Nice to have you back again." Seppo says that the book that I sent him the etudes for is almost ready to be proofread. That's great news. All right, everybody. Nice to see you too, Angela. And we will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. And you too, Karen. Nice to see you. All right. Bye bye.